Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. Pleasure for me to be here today and to give you an update on Neovasc. First of all, I may be coming across to you quite convincing, but let me assure you I cannot predict the future. And that's essentially what this says in a lot of legal terminology. So always be careful in investing and collect your own facts. The company has two core products in cardiology. I'm going to focus today on the reducer, which is also the brunt of our efforts at the moment in terms of what we are developing and investing our cash on. The reducer product on the left is a device to treat refractory angina. It's a minimally invasive product to treat angina. We are commercial in Europe. We have been included in the European guidelines for the treatment of refractory angina. In the US, we have a breakthrough status by the FDA, and we are in our pivotal clinical IDE study in the United States. I'm very proud to be surrounded by really a phenomenal and experienced leadership team and really an organization that I'm in total extremely proud of, very dedicated organization to bring these products to the market and to focus on refractory angina for the treatment of these patients. What is refractory angina? It's actually a huge problem that is not really understood and recognized well. I really believe, and we really as an organization are proud of the fact to be at the forefront of what we believe to be a next revolution in interventional cardiology, in the proper treatment of angina to begin with. When you look at angina, it comes in two different categories. The first one is basically obstructive coronary artery disease. It happens in a lot of patients. These patients get stented or bypassed. What a few people only talk about is that there's still a lot of patients that still have angina after stenting and bypass. In the range of 20 to 30% of patients still have angina after these treatments. The other group of patients are the ones that do not even have coronary artery obstructions and have angina. That's the second group. And there are no good treatment options for those patients, either the remaining refractory angina patients with coronary obstruction or the ones that don't even have coronary obstruction. Here's what we do. We have a device that is an hourglass shape that we put in the coronary sinus, so we don't treat anything in the coronary arteries. We basically go in the coronary sinus and put a restriction in the outflow of the blood that comes out of the myocardium. And when you do that and the device gets proper endothelialized after 4 to 6 weeks, we create basically a back pressure in all of the microvasculature, all of the microvessels in the myocardium, that because of the back pressure that we create, because of this outflow mechanism, they open up a little more, they stand open a little more, and they get better oxygenated. And that reduces angina for these patients. We have a first randomized placebo-controlled study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine a few years ago. This study was actually successful. I don't know how many randomized placebo-controlled clinical trials in cardiology there have been successful. Most were not successful. Ours was successful. Basically, when you go through the details, you will see that there was a huge sham effect in the range of about 40% of patients that believed to feel better after they believed to have been treated, but they were not treated. However, the treatment effect with the reducer was about 70%. So it was a statistically significant improvement over the sham procedure, which is really a very unusual and very positive finding. Now, we are with the FDA in the breakthrough device status. We are enrolling in the COSIRA-II clinical study in the United States. That's our pivotal study. It is another randomized placebo-controlled clinical trial. We are going to be enrolling about 380 patients in North America. That's in the US and in Canada. And I'm very pleased to tell you that just yesterday, we received the approval from the Canadian authorities to also actually start the introduction of the study and to treat patients in Canada. So we are very, very pleased with that. We are already enrolling patients in the United States in about 12 centers, and that's growing as we speak. We're very proud to have really renowned cardiologists like Dr. Greg Stone and Dr. Tim Henry being the PIs for this clinical study. I really like to just give you a little bit more background on microvascular disease. What is this? You know, how do we really get to treating angina? Again, here's the slide that I showed you before. It's the obstructive and the non-obstructive coronary artery patients that we differentiate in. When you look particularly in the second one, the non-obstructive, no treatment option has been available for that. These patients get angiograms. Oh, your coronary arteries are wide open. There's nothing we can do. As opposed to the first one that gets stents or bypassed, they get treated, but then they still may have refractory angina, and that's typically how we identify the population in the first category. In the second category, it's very interesting, and here you see a picture of what you typically look at. The coronary arteries, the big three veins, you see them very clearly on the left-hand side, the LCD, the circumflex, and the right coronary artery. The big coronary arteries is basically what interventional cardiology has been about in the last 25, 30 years. That has been the focus of our treatment. It's basically the big arteries that run over the heart that provide blood to the myocardium. What nobody ever talks about is all these microvessels that are underneath those. And there's no treatment being done on those, not in the last 25, 30 years. So basically, when you look at coronary artery treatments, it's what we call the tip of the iceberg. The reducer has been included in the European guidelines as a 2B option for treatment. So the device already that we have commercially in Europe is being recognized by the European guidelines. And what's also very important in the guidelines is that there is a recommendation to do more flow measurements, do really flow measurements to find out, is it a coronary artery disease issue or is it a microvascular issue, and to differentiate between those two. There are systems available to do those diagnostics. There's one from Coren that's Abbott, and there's a Philips system that provides wires and microcatheters to really identify the flow in the coronary arteries and identify, does this patient have coronary artery disease or microvascular disease? And here's a typical example of that. These are the systems that are now available to do diagnostic testing. On the left here you see at baseline, the patient has CCS class 3 angina, severe angina. FFR was 0.9, which is normal. That means the coronary arteries are wide open. CFR, which is basically the flow reserve, how much more blood can be provided into the myocardium when the patient is going to be active, is only 1.7. So only 1.7 more times blood goes to the myocardium under activity. And the IMR, that's basically the resistance in the network, meaning in the microvascular, was quite high, 40. And you see 4 months later, after the implantation of the reducer, those flow numbers have changed. Now the patient is CCS class 1, angina down, FFR 0.92, good, and not changed because we didn't do anything to the coronary arteries. CFR now 3.2, almost double the amount of blood being pumped into the myocardium under activity, and the resistance in the micronetwork 12 versus 40 before. So you can see clearly and objectively now the effect of the reducer. There are all kinds of other studies going on by investigators in the field to look at the same thing. When you use these new diagnostic tools, can we see what the reducer does? Very exciting for us. And just last week at TCT, Dr. Banai, our medical director, presented his first 10 patients of the ANOCA population, meaning these patients have no coronary artery disease, have no treatment options, but have angina. And here is the preliminary data on these first 10 patients. And you see again, FFR, which is a measure for coronary flow performance in the coronary arteries, is unchanged, but IMR, the resistance in the microvasculature, goes drastically down. CFR, the flow reserve, how much more blood goes in when you're active, goes dramatically up, and RR also goes dramatically up. I won't explain RR. At the same time, the 6-minute walk test for the patient improves dramatically, and the CCS class is obviously reduced dramatically as well. So we have a lot of objective measures that are coming to the forefront now. It's no longer just subjective data. Seattle Angina Questionnaire, all of these things show major improvements for the patient with the reducer device. So we're really, really excited about this technology where we can, in a much more optimal way, treat patients now with coronary artery disease, obstructive or non-obstructive, because we treat microvascular disease. From a reimbursement standpoint, we are doing really well. In the US clinical pivotal trial, we are already getting reimbursed. That's already all in place. We have inpatient, outpatient reimbursement in place with CMS. We actually also introduced specific codes now in the CCS system for refractory angina. It didn't exist before. It was just angina, but not refractory angina. That is also now there. We're really leading the field, and we're leading the field now in really looking at these issues for these patients. In Europe, we have NUB1 reimbursement since several years in Germany. We have a dedicated high-cost tariff excluded devices reimbursement in the UK. We were the very first one to get reimbursement in France in their new prise en charge transitoire process, the very first company in the world that actually got reimbursed in France as well. And now we're working on countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, and Italy. And here are our milestones. Really, the top line is the most important for us as a company. It's all about getting US approval, and that's the next major step in terms of value creation and progress for our therapy. Last but not least, in terms of financials, when you look at the end of the second quarter, we had almost $38 million of cash in the bank. We are well funded. We have cash till about mid-24. Here you see the outstanding shares. We're traded on NASDAQ and TSX. And yet, when you look at our market cap in the market, the company is valued publicly at about $20 million. So we are valued at $20 million, which is about half the amount of cash we have in the bank. That is a fate that many US publicly traded companies have at the moment in these very difficult financial markets. So we believe that there is a big opportunity for investment in our company. We believe that we are completely undervalued as it relates to where we are and where we're going, and we believe this is to be a great opportunity for investment. Thank you very much.